The Washington Nationals took encouraging steps in 2025 just as their young core hit the majors. Now, with some MLB experience under their belt and some additions to the roster, the squad is looking to make some noise in a loaded National League East. And today we'll be looking at all of that and more in the 2025 Washington Nationals preview. The biggest move of the offseason came 3 days prior to Christmas with the acquisition of Nathaniel Lowe in exchange for lefty reliever Robert Garcia. Lowe brings excellent value to the Nats at the first base spot, being an above average hitter and excellent defender. He isn't the prolific bat you'd expect from first base, but he does post respectable numbers, averaging 21 homers and 80 RBIs over a 162 game sample. On top of that, Lau is under control through the 2026 season, which should give the team a great floor at the position. As for Robert Garcia, he didn't post the greatest numbers in 2024 with a 4.22 ERA. However, there is a lot to like about the lefty reliever once you peek under the hood, especially for a player that hasn't hit arbitration yet. It seems to be one of those trades that could be mutually beneficial. As for the rest of the additions to the team, the Nationals signed a plethora of players to one-year deals in Michael Soroka, Josh Bell, Ahmed Rosario, Jorge Lopez, and Paul DeYoung, with Shinosuke Agasawara grabbing a 2-year deal. Of that collection, Lopez and Bell look to have the most impact, with Lopez currently in the running to be the team's closer and Bell pegged as the team's DH. It certainly is not a headliner of a class, but it should provide a nice floor to the team until the rest of the farm can get to the majors. For losses, the Nationals saw a lot of bullpen depth walk out the door in the form of Tanner Rainey, Kyle Finnegan, Robert Garcia, and Jacob Barnes, as well as Joey Gallo and Patrick Corbin. Finnegan is probably the name to latch onto as he has been a rock for this team since his debut in 2020. He was circled at the trade deadline after his All Star season, and he wasn't moved. Then in the offseason, the team non tendered the right hander after he was projected to make significantly more in arbitration, and that leaves the current team in a rougher spot in terms of the bullpen. That leaves the current team with Keibert Ruiz behind the dish, Nathaniel Lowe at first, Luis Garcia at second, CJ Abrams fresh out of the casino at short, Jose Tena projected to start at third and platoon with the Med Rosario, James Wooden left, Jacob Young in center, and Dylan Cruz in right, with Josh Bell at DH. Riley Adams as the backup catcher, Paul DeYoung as an additional infielder, and Alex Call as the fourth outfielder. As you can see, there were some definitive strengths and weaknesses to the roster, a strong season projected from James Wood and Lau, but certainly some issues at catcher and third. The rotation is currently projected to be Mackenzie Gore, Jake Irvin, Mitchell Parker, Trevor Williams, and Michael Soroka, and unfortunately Zips doesn't love this unit either, with only Gore being a below 4 ERA type pitcher, and the unit is supposed to finish 26th in the majors in total value added, with the bullpen not projected to do any better at 28th. One player who isn't even projected on the opening day roster, but can help the rotation break past the current projections, is DJ Hers, who put together an up and down rookie season last year. However, there are plenty of things for the lefty to build upon moving into his sophomore season. Hers is great at getting swing and miss, inducing a ton of strikeouts, and even when opponents do make contact, it isn't regularly hard. Where he gets himself into trouble is with walks and the type of contact he allows. While it isn't traditionally hard, the contact does get into the air too frequently, and it can cause for bad results. Some slight adjustments to his pitch mix could help boost the lefty starter into a pillar for this young Nats team and provide this rotation a much needed consistent starter behind Gore. On the offensive side, Jacob Young is an interesting name to keep an eye on. We all know about his defensive prowess and speed. It's actually so impressive that if you can find any sort of offensive value, it'll turn him into a really plus center fielder. Luckily for Young, he does really well squaring up the ball. He just lacks bat speed. He'll never be a Mike Trout, but if he can adapt to the pull the ball in the air hit profile to get a few sneaky homers, any sort of offensive value would have to push the Nats center fielder higher than 28th in the majors. For impactful prospects, the highest rated of the bunch has to be Dylan Cruz, who we saw for a brief period last season, which didn't go the greatest, but make no mistake, Cruz is sick. As you can see from the grades, he does pretty much everything fairly well, and would even make a six center fielder, but will yield to Young. He has shown signs that would imply that he could be a hitter who cranks north of 30 homers, and with plus speed, it really rounds him out to be one of these coveted five tool guys. Just be patient with Cruz, and he will become a superstar for this team. And it looked like Brady House was on a similar trek to superstardom until this previous season. House is a massive human being that will likely be the team's third baseman at some point in the season. There's also hope for him to be a 30 plus homer sort of guy with his 60 grade power. It did look like he was pressing a little bit last season as his swing decisions took a massive turn for the worse, especially at the AAA level. Being a high school pitcher and shortstop makes his arm really phenomenal, and he'll be a plus option at the hot corner and a great player if he can turn it around. And the final prospect who can be a really impactful player for the Nationals is Cade Cavalli. We've been waiting on Cavalli for a really long time, and it looks like in 2025 we will finally see him healthy. As a prospect, Cavalli was one of the more intriguing names in all of the minor leagues. He got that prowess from his electric stuff with his fastball getting the elusive 70 grade, pair that with a 60 grade curveball, 55 grade slider, and 55 grade changeup, and it makes a really tantalizing prospect. Prior to the injury, the big knock on the righty was his control, and unfortunately, that could lead him to finding his way to the bullpen. Either way, it will be a big year for the former top prospect, whether that's in the majors or grinding away in the minor leagues. For players the team could look to move on from at the deadline if everything goes poorly, you can imagine all of their offseason signings will be on the block, as well as Derek Law, who had a really good season for the Nats last year. Their in season performance will determine how much value they get back, but none of these players will likely fetch a large haul back. For injuries, there are a couple Tommy John victims in Josiah Gray and Mason Thompson. Thompson missed all of last season and should return early on in the season if he isn't ready by opening day. And unfortunately for the Nationals, Gray is not expected to pitch in 2025, a big blow for rotation and limbo. And that brings us to the overall predictions for the team. As for the floor, there is still a world where this team doesn't take the next step and actually regresses. There are some major question marks around certain position groups. If everything goes well in a division that continues to get better, this team could finish 64 and 98. If everything goes well, the young players and prospects thrive, and some of the question marks fall in their favor. This team could finish right at 500 at 81 and 81. However, the reality is that they didn't do as much as even the teams within their own division, and they are highly reliant on the internal development of the young guys, and for that, it is why they will finish slightly better than last year at 73 and 89. Let me know where you have the Nationals finishing 2025 down below. Thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful day.